The battle for Ukraine is now centering around a massive dam on Ukraine's Dnieper River. Kyiv has warned Russia it will hit back harder if Russia blows it up. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy accuses Russia of planning to destroy the dam and send floodwaters rushing towards hundreds of thousands of people. Water from the dam is also vital for cooling Europe's largest nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia. Moscow is telling its citizens that if the hydroelectric plant is destroyed, Ukraine will be at fault.
The massive Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant in southern Ukraine, with its huge water reservoir, may soon become a weapon of war with devastating consequences. According to the Ukrainian president, Russian troops have planted mines in the dam. He says they are planning a false flag operation to trigger an enormous flood.
This is one of our largest energy facilities. The dam connected to this hydroelectric plant holds 18 billion cubic meters of water. If Russian terrorists blow it up, more than 80 settlements, including Kherson, will be in the zone hit by the flash flooding. Hundreds of thousands of people would be affected.
The expanse of water north of the power plant has been nicknamed the Sea. Over 240 kilometers of the Dnieper River are held back by this dam. Last March, Russian forces took over this site during their invasion. Now, 7 months later, the Russians are maintaining a defensive position in the region. Experts say that the Russian military may think that breaching the dam could cover their retreat from the right bank of the Dnieper River and prevent or delay Ukrainian advances towards Kherson. Within Russia, news sources are saying that it is not them, but Ukraine that is planning to blow up the dam.
We're now joined by Roman Goncharenko from DW's Russia and Eastern Europe service. Hello, Roman. Could you give us an idea of what it would mean if this dam were to be blown up?
Well, two things would happen. First, we could have very many civilian casualties, probably tens of thousands. Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians could be affected. It's a hugely populated area, and this flood, we don't know how high, maybe 1, maybe 2 meters high, will flood more than 80 places, like smaller villages, smaller towns, and the city of Kherson itself. We haven't seen anything like this in Ukraine or in the former Soviet Union, so it will be a huge catastrophe. Of course, there will be also consequences for the energy supply, because this is a power plant, and there could be consequences for the atomic power plant further up the stream. And, which is also important for Russia, there could be consequences for that canal which is providing water from the Dnieper River to the Crimean Peninsula, annexed by Russia in 2014. So Russia actually has no interest in blowing up. And militarily, this is the second aspect. This would slow down both sides. So it will make the Ukrainian offensive slower, and it will make it more difficult for Russians to retreat if they want.
Right. We've seen both sides accusing each other of having plans to blow up this dam. Is it really just a matter of time before it actually happens?
No, I don't think it's predestined to happen. My assumption is that Russia has actually mined the dam, but for a slightly different purpose that we might think. I think the Russian purpose is to stop Ukraine from shelling that dam with rockets, with missiles, because there are very few bridges over the Dnieper River. It is very wide, and Russia needs those bridges to retreat or to advance. So Ukraine has been shelling the biggest Antonievsky bridge in the city of Kherson itself, but Russia could signal, if you shell this dam, you could damage it, and then we can no longer use it. So we put some explosives here, so you see what would happen if you continue. I think this is the actual reason behind it.
Right, and we've seen Russia actually, a part of its plan has been to carry out attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure recently. What does that tell you about their strategy?
Well, there are attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure as we speak. Several cities are hit again, including possibly the capital Kyiv or the Kyiv regions, cities in the south like Odessa and some others. So it's a sign of weakness. It's a sign of weakness, Russian weakness on the battlefront. And Russia is trying, of course, to compensate those losses of territory it had in September in the north by the city of Kharkiv, the second largest city of Ukraine. And it is time to gain time to wait until that mobilization that President Putin ordered will show effect on the battlefield.
Okay. Roman Goncharenko, thank you for speaking to us. Let's take a look now at some other developments in the war. Britain, France and Germany are calling for the United Nations to investigate whether Russia has used Iranian-made drones to attack Ukraine. They say the use of such weapons would breach a UN Security Council resolution. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Washington would pursue any opportunity to engage in diplomacy with Russia if it sees an opening. But he adds that he has seen no evidence that Moscow is interested in ending the war in Ukraine. DW correspondent Kilian Bayer spoke to Latvian Foreign Minister Edgars Rinkēvičs for more analysis on the current security situation in Europe.
With me is the Latvian Foreign Minister, Mr. Edgars Rinkēvičs. Mr. Rinkēvičs, Russia has mobilized hundreds of thousands of civilians to plug the holes in its combat army. Recent reports indicate that Russia has lost almost 50% of its original invasion force. What does this mean for the security in the Baltics?
At this point, we do not see any direct military threat. We have more NATO presence than we had before 21st of February when Russia started its aggression against Ukraine. What is, of course, a challenge is this new Russian-Belarusian military group that is being formed. Of course, it's being formed against Ukraine, but we are closely monitoring any moves. But at this point, no, there is no any immediate direct military threat to the Baltics or to Poland or to any other NATO or EU country.
Latvia, with the other Baltic states, is among one of the biggest military donors to Ukraine. Your country gives much more military aid than Germany, say, per capita. Do you think that countries like Germany are not pulling their weight?
Well, what I've always been saying, and I can repeat it here, is that indeed we must help Ukraine. The bottom line is give Ukraine what it asks for. I know that German government, other European governments are sending weapons, military equipment. The problem is that this is the war.
What should Germany do better?
Well, I think that we have been talking about the need to send more air defense equipment, that we need to send more weapons to Ukraine. But I do believe that there is a more general problem for all of us. We are sending a lot of equipment. Yes, Latvia at this point is number one when it comes to percentage of GDP. We have sent equipment worth of 3 million euros. For a small country, that's a very big deal. But at the same time, we need military industry to step up its effort because we need replenishments and Ukrainians need more.
What would you say to people who think that it's better not to push Vladimir Putin into a corner for fear of nuclear escalation?
Well, first of all, nobody is pushing Vladimir Putin in the corner but Vladimir Putin himself. He started this war. He started that back in 2014, actually, not 2022. Ukrainians are fighting and defeating. If we give in into nuclear blackmail, then it will continue. And I think that it is absolutely critical to help Ukrainians any way we can. That's our best insurance policy against any kind of use of nuclear weapons.
Can there be an end to this war without an end to Vladimir Putin?
I think that this war can end only when Ukrainians win. With or without Putin, I don't care.
Mr. Rinkēvičs, thank you so much for the interview.